So Roth conversion, a good idea? Well, in this video, we're going to walk through the system and steps that we took with one of our clients to help you determine if it's right for you. In this video, we're going to cover what a Roth conversion is and how it works, the benefits of doing a Roth conversion, and then lastly, determining whether or not a Roth conversion is right for you. Also, if you want access to the tool that we use in this video, click the link down below so you can help determine whether or not a Roth conversion is appropriate for you. Well, today we're talking about Roth conversions. A lot of times people ask us if this is a good idea, and we thought what better way to show this and share this with you guys, our listeners, than a real life client scenario. This is a real life example of how we helped a client determine not just whether or not a Roth conversion was right for them today, but what it looked like in the future throughout their plan.
We're really excited to show you this. It's a huge question that a lot of accumulators have as they are building their wealth. And then as people are in that last 5 to 10 years before retirement, it's like, what do I do now? You've heard us talk a lot about pre-tax money versus post-tax or tax advantage money. In retirement, there's a lot of things you can do to help yourself have options when it comes to the taxability of the money that comes out of your account. This is one of those options. And this is how we try to solve the issue of not having control over what you do with your money because of taxes versus getting out ahead of that problem and having more control over it. This client, we'll call them Jim and Susie Sample, my favorite clients, if I had to say so myself. I hope they don't tell the others. But Jim and Susie are 59 years old, and they were fortunate enough to save a lot of money ahead of time for retirement. So they are getting ready now to retire at age 60. As we go through this, notice they are 59. At age 60, they'll be able to take funds out of their retirement accounts without penalty. Most of it is pre-tax money, so they will be taxed on it, but that penalty age is gone. They're ready to retire. And as we go through this, we'll kind of show you where is the setup of how they want to retire, what their goals are, what is the proposed plan for giving them more control over their taxes in retirement as well. And if we hop over to their goals, you can see age 60, this retirement age goal is coming up for them next year. They need to spend $8,000 a year to maintain their current lifestyle throughout retirement. And as always, to be super conservative about what we're spending, we assume annual healthcare costs throughout retirement for both spouses, plus some long-term care expenses that we know for a lot of Americans are coming up towards the end of their plan. Here we assume just 2 years at the end of the plan, but depending on folks' health or experience of what other family members have gone through, we can always adjust that to make sure that we're being conservative with those assumptions. We created a plan here to delay taking Social Security. When they retire, obviously, they're not going to have a salary anymore, which is a big shift for some retirees. But we do have Social Security benefits. For Jim, we're going to be taking $3,100 a month, and we're delaying to his full retirement age here. For Susie, we're delaying also to full retirement age, and we're taking $3,000 a month. They both had good incomes throughout their working years. They both got solid Social Security benefits together. So the next consideration we look at is, what is this family's net worth? What have they saved already as we build out this plan? So if we look at their net worth, we've got a good disbursement of different types of taxable funds here. We've got cash, we've got their home, a pretty simple situation on the balance sheet for them, even though it can become very complicated tax-wise when you take a look at all of this pre-tax money in the 401ks and really a comparative lack of tax advantage money in the Roth IRAs that they're bringing to the table right now. They do have this joint taxable account, and they do have some savings built up in their cash accounts, which will help us have a few more options as we consider the Roth conversions going forward.
So Jake, this one's really important. This is what we see a lot of times with clients. I always say, hey, I much rather have you save money than save no money at all. And Jim and Susie are really not different than the norm of what we see all the time, which is, hey, most of my money that's saved for retirement is in my 401k. And more often than not, that's going to be traditional pre-tax money that's sitting in your 401k.
That's right. And we've done a lot of work with clients. We've done a lot of talking about on this show so far already, how we can take that situation and make it more flexible for the retiree. But you're exactly right. This is a very normal financial picture for retirees that had good incomes, had good savings, and just dumped a bunch of money in their 401ks, which is great. They've done a really good job of saving, and that's going to help them have more options than if they had not saved at all. If we look at their cash flows, this is the next thing that we dive into with folks. What do your cash flows look like in retirement? We go over here and we say, hey, you have no income congratulations. Now you are not making a salary. You're on the other side of the fence here. It's time to draw down these accounts. And you can see there are still expenses coming through that they have to pay for. Your expenses don't just go away. It's a mindset shift, making sure that you can spend that money. And these outflows come from all of the accounts that they've worked so hard to save for. We've got living expenses. We're assuming some housing expenses. And then, of course, those healthcare expenses that we've already talked about. Again, we're trying to be pretty conservative here and assume you'll have some unexpected ongoing healthcare expenses in retirement, like most folks. We've got those living expenses. You can see really just the retirement goal here, keeping it simple for this initial analysis for them. What you'll see next is tax payments. And you might be surprised to see that in the first few years of retirement, they're not really paying any taxes. How can that be if they have built up so many assets over their working years that they have no real taxes in the first couple of years of retirement? The reason that is because they have cash and taxable accounts that they can draw from. And they may pay some tax on capital gains for liquidating from these accounts, but they're not going to pay as much tax or any tax if they can stay under some of those thresholds for how much capital gain you can take out in a given year, while also not having any other ordinary income from a salary, from pre-tax account withdrawals, things of that nature. And as you can see, we do have taxes coming up in those subsequent years because they are starting to live off of their pre-tax funds after the taxable accounts run out.
So one of the other things I do want to point out here is you'll see the expenses start to slowly increase. And again, even if they're spending $8,000 a month, $8,000 today isn't going to go as far as $8,000 in the future. So the reason that this number is rising, in case you were wondering why does it keep going up, is because we baked in inflation into that. And we expect that it'll be the equivalent of $8,000 today in the future.
When Jim and Susie retire, there's several different buckets that we've filled up as they were saving throughout their working years. We've got taxable money here. We've got their 401k money for both of them. And again, that's going to be pre-tax for the purposes of this analysis. The pre-tax money in this bucket here. And then we've got the tax advantage Roth dollars over here. You can see we're a little bit imbalanced in the way that we saved coming into retirement, something that during the conversation with Jim and Susie, we really wanted to get to a place where we had a better mix of taxable, tax deferred, and tax-free money. When we come to the table in this meeting, we're going to be looking at this mix right here at age 60 and trying to do something about it to give ourselves more of a flexible withdrawal strategy throughout all of retirement. And honestly, one of the things that we've talked about with them is how do we pass some of this money to our kids? Because there's almost no way that we can spend all of it. You know, we've just saved and saved and saved. We never needed to spend as much as we made when we were working. We don't want to spend all of this money as we're retired and going through retirement. How do we pass this in a way that is more beneficial to our kids, to our grandkids, versus just sending them $2 million of 401k money? Or as you can see, it continues to grow. If we go down the line and just take out $8,000 a month, the likelihood that it grows to something much more substantial down the road is pretty high. And we've got to manage the distribution not only during their retirement, but they're thinking beyond retirement to their kids, their grandkids. How are they going to receive these assets in a way that's advantageous to them? So as we look at how are these funds distributed and taken over the course of Jim and Susie's retirement, is in these first years of retirement, there's not much in the way of taxes being paid. Again, they have those taxable funds. And as long as that capital gain that they are required to take by liquidating and distributing those funds to themselves to live on is below a certain threshold, they're not going to have to pay taxes on it. And they have these years in their early retirement after they retire and before they take Social Security. There's this window where they're not paying much in taxes. And there's a lot of planning that can be done in this early part of retirement to set them up for their future years. And now, if you're watching this video and you're asking, well, Jake, why the heck would I go from $0 in taxes and actually pay more taxes? Why would I willingly do that and give my money back to the government? Again, there's only three places your money can go. It's to you and your family. It can go to charity, or it can go to the government. And most people say, hey, Mr. Government, Uncle Sam, no, thank you. I'll gladly keep my dollars in my own pocket or give it to charity if at all possible. But there are advantages to looking at a strategy, the Roth conversion, in these low taxable years. Not only is it before we take Social Security, but it's before this age 65 where we run into Medicare and start having Medicare premiums, things of that nature. And we want to try to duck those brackets as well. What you'll notice here as we go down the line into retirement is that you're seeing different tax brackets, right? And so there's tax rates for every step of income that you have in retirement. And that boils down to a single blended tax rate is what it's called. So that first tax bracket is the 10% tax bracket. And then you're going to have a 12% tax bracket, 22%, 24%, and so on. You're seeing a slash with another number next to it because tax laws are going to sunset in 2025 unless something changes. Those brackets will actually go up and you'll pay a few percentage points higher tax on each levels of income as you go up the line there. One thing you'll notice as you look at this graph for Jim and Susie is they do have this 0% tax bracket that they're in for the first few years of retirement. Then they start living on these taxable assets, but you might see there's a big jump and a big difference in the trajectory of their tax rate and how much they're taking out going forward. The reason for that is required minimum distributions. So at age 73, they're going to be forced for the rest of retirement to take out a required amount from those pre-tax accounts. And that's where we really get into with our clients, the higher tax rates that you're paying, making your Social Security more taxable, paying higher Medicare premiums even, because you have so much pre-tax money, you're not spending it, and the government really wants to force you to take it out so you can pay taxes on it. Where we're going to see this on the cash flow summary is the planned distributions tab. So you can see planned distributions and expenses. In the first few years of retirement, these expenses are being paid by taxable accounts and then pre-tax dollars before RMD age. But age 75 for them, they're going to be taking out planned distributions, required distributions from their pre-tax accounts. In the first couple of years, you'll see planned distributions and expenses match up pretty closely. And that's not going to be a problem right away. Now, in the future, you can see even at age 80, there starts to be a separation there. They start needing to take out more than they actually have to spend to satisfy their annual spending that they desire to have in retirement. So you can really see that when it comes to the planned distributions, for instance, at age 82, and the increase in the amount of taxes that they have to pay. If we scroll up just a little bit here, you can see the jump between ages 73 and 74, 75, 76, the difference that can have when you're forced to take more money out than you actually would have spent if you hadn't had to take it out. So for Jim and Susie, because of that unique problem that they have with their pre-tax money and the increase in the required distributions that they'll have at age 75, we're going to go ahead and look at Roth conversion strategies. The first thing we do, you can see as we look through this and analyze it and try to figure out how much in tax are we going to pay? How much of a benefit will that really have? Sometimes there really is no benefit, but in their case, there is benefit. If we start at 10%, I'll show you the initial effect of what that has on the retirement plan. And you can see here, we've got this little green bar is where the Roth conversion causes us to pay some taxes up to this 10% tax bracket line. And that's really the first step. How much can we fill up that 10% tax bracket? How much of a benefit is that going to have? You can see this proposed strategy number, $615,000. That's going to be the first step there. Now, if we go back down and we say, all right, what does it look like if we do 22%? Come back up. You can see the Roth conversions happening all throughout here, filling up that 22% tax bracket. And we can see the benefit of this proposed strategy is giving us a tax adjusted portfolio that is $2.3 million higher than if they had not done the Roth conversions. Again, this is going to be due to the fact that we're lowering the planned distributions, those RMDs that they're forced to take out at age 75. It's lowering that amount and they're not having to pay taxes on extra money because they did it earlier on, again, trying to gain control of their money instead of letting their money control them. They did it earlier on, paid the taxes willingly up front when they were in a lower tax bracket and limited the amount that they're going to pay down the line. If you look over here, you can see the tax rate falling off of the table here.
So Jake, why wouldn't somebody want to just do all the conversions up front? I mean, is there a method to the madness as to when we show these conversions, when we don't? And is there a right or wrong way to do it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we want to make sure that we employ the strategy in a way that actually helps your financial situation. We always do our best to look at every different tax bracket we could fill up. In this case, we're looking at the 22% tax bracket, but if we were to fill up the 35% tax bracket, you'll be able to see up here, there's a big difference in what we're paying up front in terms of taxes. And all of those Roth conversions are done within the first couple of years. That may seem great. You have no pre-tax money left after that. But what you'll see is the proposed strategy value went down, right? So if I go back down here and put it back to where we had it, you can see the $2.3 million value that's brought through those more limited Roth conversions. I mean, still substantial, but limited Roth conversions early on in retirement create a lot of value, but they didn't bump us up into these much higher tax brackets. If you pay so high of a tax at the beginning, it really does eat away at the portfolio and what can grow for the future. It does give you that control, but we don't want to sacrifice actual after-tax benefit just to get everything in a Roth.
Yeah, so there is definitely a strategy that we look at when it comes to this, because it's going to be a little bit different for everybody depending on your particular situation. But as you can see in that proposed strategy tab, I mean, it's almost $1.5 million difference between doing it one way versus doing it the other versus not doing it at all.
I do want to show specifically the effect on your required minimum distributions. And we break that out here. And you can see with the Roth conversion strategy, our total required distributions are about $235,000. Whereas if we just left it there and didn't do anything differently at all, you're going to pay taxes on $5 million of required distributions. And again, those required distributions, you're using some of them to fund your retirement, but there's a good amount of those distributions that are over top of what you would have taken out if you hadn't had to take it. And that difference of $4.8 million almost, that is a massive difference in the amount that you are forced to take out of your portfolio, even if you didn't want to or need to. Where you can really see the effect of that, if I jump over to federal taxes paid, you can see the difference in these two graphs, right? So up front with the current distribution strategy or conversion strategy, you can see we're filling up this tax bracket here, and that comes out to $1.02 million of taxes paid on the federal level. If we had made no changes whatsoever, you'd be paying $1.5 million in federal tax. And at the end of the day, you can really see the difference in the account balance here as well. How much money do we have in all these different vehicles, right? We always talk about wanting to have a good spread, a good mix of money in retirement. But certainly when you get to the end of your life, it's much, much better to have these Roth dollars in your portfolio to pass this to the next generation, to live off of when you're probably spending a lot on long-term care. If you're fortunate enough not to have done that, that's just more money for your heirs that comes to them tax-free. At the end, you can see the difference here in the balance of the portfolio and where it's actually held in terms of the tax allocation of those funds.
Yeah. And we talk about this all the time with clients, and on these videos we hit on all the time because it is so important. I mean, just the substantial difference there between the tax-free bucket that you can pass on to your loved ones or tax deferred, that again, not only are they going to not inherit that full amount because there's going to be taxes due on it, but it's also going to impact their current tax situation. So again, from a planning perspective, not just a benefit to you today in your retirement going forward, but also down the line as you continue to pass this money on to the rest of your family.
That's exactly right, Kyle. And if we look at the end of the plan for most folks, and again, we're assuming age 90 here, we can always kick that age out or bring it forward depending on the situation. But for Jim and Susie, the Roth conversions actually leave them with more assets in their portfolio, not just more after-tax assets, but more assets because they really limited in these years how much they paid in taxes. And again, we're assuming current tax rates hold. I really got to believe that tax rates go up over time. It doesn't always work out that way, but just with the current environment we're in, it seems like tax rates could go up, and it gives you that control to not pay taxes at those rates in these years, and leaves you with this gap where you actually have more money. There really is more money left in your plan, whether that's after tax, pre-tax. It's more dollars for you to live on, to give away, to leave as a legacy to your kids. And that's what it's all about, is making sure that we bring that value to the plan, even if it takes 25, 30 years to see it. This is what we're trying to give to our clients as we make these analyses and look at the Roth conversion for them.
Yeah. And clearly, if you're watching this video and made it this far, I mean, there's a lot that goes into this. This is the surface level as to some of the things that we consider when we look at this. But you're exactly right, Jake. I mean, it's a $1.6 million difference. There's nothing to sneeze at there. It really just comes down to taking the time to either implement this strategy yourself or finding a professional that can help you put this into place. It's more than just what am I invested in? And yeah, it's in a Roth, or yeah, it's in an IRA or taxable account. I mean, there really are a lot of different things and levers that can be pulled, if known and pulled appropriately, can have a substantial impact on yourself and also for the money you leave behind for loved ones. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Hopefully it helped answer the question and help you determine whether or not a Roth conversion is appropriate and right for you. If you'd like to see more content like this, go ahead and click subscribe. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment them down below. And if you have any questions for us personally beyond that, make sure you check us out at definingwealth.com.